Relationships can be complex, and sometimes the end isn't marked by dramatic fights or clear conversations about breaking up. Instead, it's often the smaller, more subtle signs that indicate someone is emotionally pulling away. These changes are typically so gradual that they can go unnoticed, especially if you're still clinging to hope or trying to maintain the connection. The absence of clear confrontation or direct action can make it difficult to tell when things are truly over, but those quiet shifts can speak volumes. In this guide, we'll explore 8 powerful signs that show she may be saying goodbye without directly telling you. These signs might not be obvious at first glance, but recognizing them early on can give you the emotional clarity you need. By identifying these shifts, you can better understand where the relationship stands and make decisions that serve your own emotional well-being. While it's never easy to face the reality of a relationship ending, awareness allows you to handle the situation with more grace and confidence. It's important to note that recognizing these signs isn't about being paranoid or overanalyzing every interaction. Relationships naturally evolve, and it's normal for dynamics to change over time. However, understanding when these changes might signal that the relationship is headed in a different direction can help you make informed choices. So, let's begin with the first and often most telling sign: emotional detachment. This shift is one of the clearest indicators that the connection you once had may be slipping away. 1. Emotional withdrawal. At the beginning of your relationship, she was open about her thoughts, feelings, and the little details of her daily life. Whether it was sharing her excitement about a new project or talking about something that stressed her out, communication felt effortless. However, recently, you might notice that she's become more distant. Her emotional openness has significantly decreased, and she seems less inclined to share her inner world with you. She may even seem preoccupied or aloof when you try to engage in deeper conversations. Emotional withdrawal is often a defense mechanism. It happens when someone begins to detach from a relationship. This behavior can stem from a variety of reasons, but often it's a way of protecting oneself from the emotional strain of a relationship that's no longer fulfilling. If she's already checked out emotionally, she may feel that engaging further would only expose her to more hurt or frustration. In some cases, she may be avoiding confronting the reality that her feelings are fading, and withdrawal allows her to cope with that shift without having to directly address it. If you notice a significant decrease in her emotional engagement, it's important to recognize it for what it is: a potential sign that she's emotionally distancing herself and may be preparing to end the relationship. Rather than ignoring or dismissing this behavior, take time to reflect on whether this withdrawal is a temporary phase or a permanent shift in her behavior. It's essential to assess whether you're dealing with a short-term issue that can be worked through, or if this emotional disengagement indicates a deeper, irreversible change in how she feels. 2. Lack of effort. At the beginning of the relationship, she would make plans to spend time together, suggest fun activities, and even take the initiative to keep in touch. Whether it was planning spontaneous dates, sending sweet texts, or making an effort to stay emotionally connected, you could feel her investment. However, now you notice that these actions have become scarce. She's no longer putting in the same level of energy into maintaining the bond. Dates may be fewer or even cancelled, and it feels like you're the one doing all the work when it comes to initiating plans or keeping the conversation going. When someone is ready to move on, they stop making the same effort to nurture the relationship. This doesn't necessarily mean that they are angry, upset, or deliberately trying to hurt you. It's often a more subtle shift where they've mentally or emotionally checked out. When she stops showing the same initiative, it's often a sign that her priorities have shifted, and the relationship may no longer hold the same level of importance for her. People invest time and energy into relationships that feel meaningful, and when that meaning begins to fade, the effort naturally diminishes. If you've noticed that she stopped putting in the same effort, it's important to acknowledge the shift. While it may not always be easy, this could be the point where you need to have an honest conversation about where things stand. If she's open to discussing it, try to approach the conversation with understanding and an open mind. It's important to ask yourself whether you're willing to accept this shift, or if it's time to reassess the relationship and your own needs. 3. She stops making future plans. In the early stages of a relationship, there's often excitement about the future, plans for vacations, holidays, or even casual talk about long-term goals. Conversations about where you see yourselves in a few months or years are common. However, if she has stopped bringing up or even avoids discussing future plans that involve both of you, it's a sign that something has changed. The future no longer seems like something you share together, and this could be particularly noticeable when you try to talk about events months ahead or even plans for the next weekend. When someone is no longer emotionally invested, they tend to stop thinking about a future with their partner. This is because they no longer see the relationship progressing in the same way. Their emotional withdrawal from the present moment often extends to their inability or unwillingness to plan for the future. A person who is still emotionally attached to their partner will want to make plans together, as it signifies hope and commitment to the relationship. On the other hand, emotional detachment leads to avoidance of these future discussions. If she's no longer engaging in conversations about future plans, it's a clear indication that she may be emotionally distancing herself from the relationship. This shift should not be ignored, as it's often a signal that she's already moving on. Use this moment to reflect on the direction of your relationship. Consider talking to her directly about your concerns and ask where she stands emotionally. The absence of future planning is a strong sign that you may need to reassess your connection and determine if both of you are aligned in what you want moving forward. 4. She becomes emotionally unavailable. In the early stages of a relationship, emotional support is often a cornerstone. She was there for you during tough times, offering comfort, understanding, and guidance when you needed it most. However, if you now find that she's distant, uninterested, or unresponsive when you're going through a challenging moment, it may indicate a shift in her emotional investment. The absence of that emotional availability, where she no longer seems to care about your struggles or fails to provide the same level of support, signals a significant change in her feelings. Emotional unavailability is often a defense mechanism employed by someone preparing to end the relationship. It's a way to create distance, either consciously or unconsciously, to protect oneself from becoming more attached when they no longer feel the same level of commitment. If she senses that the relationship is no longer serving her emotionally, she might start to emotionally withdraw to guard against future hurt. This distancing can feel like a slow fade, where she's simply not as present as she once was, even when you need her most. If you sense that she's no longer emotionally available, it's important to acknowledge that her feelings may have changed. This doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Relationships evolve, and sometimes one person's feelings fade. Recognizing emotional unavailability as a natural part of a relationship's cycle can help you gain clarity. Take this as an opportunity to reflect on your needs and the health of your connection. If it's appropriate, you can address your concerns directly with her to understand where she stands emotionally and whether the relationship can be salvaged or if it's time to let go. 5. Physical closeness begins to fade. In the early stages of a relationship, physical affection plays a significant role in deepening the bond. Whether it's holding hands, hugging, cuddling, or simply sitting close to each other, These small acts of intimacy help maintain emotional connection. However, if you notice that these moments of physical closeness are becoming less frequent or absent altogether, it could be a sign that she's emotionally detaching. The absence of these gestures, which once felt natural, often signals a shift in the emotional dynamics of the relationship. When someone is emotionally pulling away, they may begin to withdraw physically as well. Physical affection is often a reflection of emotional closeness, and as that closeness fades, so does the desire for physical connection. This reduction in physical intimacy is not always a result of anger or conflict, but rather an indication that the person is no longer as invested in the relationship. Emotional detachment tends to lead to physical withdrawal as the person begins to create space between themselves and their partner. If you feel that physical affection is starting to fade, take a moment to assess the emotional connection between you and your partner. Relationships require both emotional and physical intimacy to thrive, and when one starts to diminish, the other often follows. Reflect on whether the emotional bond has weakened and if it's contributing to the decrease in physical closeness. It may be time to have an open and honest conversation about the changes in your relationship, addressing any concerns and exploring whether both partners are still committed to nurturing the connection. 6. She stops responding to your efforts. In a relationship, effort is often reciprocal. If you're making an effort to reach out, plan dates, or initiate conversations, you expect a certain level of engagement from your partner. However, if you notice that she's consistently indifferent to your attempts or fails to respond at all, this is a strong signal that she's no longer emotionally invested. Whether it's delayed responses, short replies, or no response at all, her lack of engagement indicates that her interest in maintaining the connection has waned. Indifference can be a subtle yet powerful way of signaling that someone is emotionally withdrawing. When a person begins to detach from the relationship, they often stop making an effort to engage with their partner. This can happen because they no longer feel emotionally connected or simply because they've mentally checked out. It's not always about being angry or upset. Rather, it's about the absence of care or concern. Without the emotional attachment, the motivation to respond or reciprocate efforts fades, making interactions feel one-sided. If she's no longer responding to your efforts, it's crucial to assess whether you're holding on to a relationship that no longer serves you. Sometimes it's easy to overlook these signs, thinking that things will improve on their own, but continued emotional neglect can be damaging. Reflect on whether you're staying invested in something that isn't being nurtured on the other side. It may be time to have a candid conversation about where things stand and consider whether it's worth holding on to a connection that's no longer mutual. Prioritize your emotional well-being and be honest with yourself about the future of the relationship. 7. She becomes preoccupied with other things. If she's spending more time with friends, focusing on her job, or picking up new hobbies, while you're left feeling like an afterthought, it's a significant sign that she's starting to detach emotionally. When someone loses interest in a relationship, they often shift their attention to other areas of their life, areas that provide fulfillment, distraction, or excitement. If you notice her consistently prioritizing other things over time with you, it's likely that her emotional connection to the relationship is weakening. This shift often happens when someone begins to emotionally check out of the relationship. Instead of investing time and energy into nurturing the bond with their partner, they look elsewhere for fulfillment. Whether it's work, friends, or new activities, these distractions serve as a way to fill the space left by an emotional disconnect. It's also a way of avoiding facing the discomfort of a fading relationship. This preoccupation is not necessarily a conscious decision. It's a natural response to the diminishing emotional pull they feel. If you notice that she's increasingly focused on other aspects of her life while leaving little room for the relationship, it's time to reflect on the state of things. Relationships require effort and attention from both sides. If she's no longer prioritizing time with you, it may signal that she's already emotionally moving on. It's important to ask yourself whether this relationship is still mutual and whether both of you are still on the same page. You may need to initiate an honest conversation to determine if you're both willing to invest in the relationship or if it's time to reevaluate your connection. 8. She stops defending the relationship. In the past, when things got difficult, she might have been the first to defend the relationship, reaffirming her commitment or expressing a desire to work things out. But now, when problems arise, she seems indifferent or even passive, no longer willing to fight for what you once shared. Whether it's disagreements, challenges, or external pressures, the lack of emotional investment in defending the relationship can signal a significant shift in her feelings. When someone has emotionally and mentally checked out, they no longer feel compelled to defend or salvage the relationship. Defending a relationship requires emotional energy, and when that energy fades, so does the desire to protect the connection. Instead of standing up for the bond you both once had, she may withdraw, expressing a lack of interest in continuing to fight for it. This can be a form of emotional disengagement, as she has already mentally begun to prepare for a life without the relationship. If she's stopped defending the relationship, it's time to take a step back and ask yourself some hard questions. Are you holding on to a connection that no longer has mutual support or commitment? Relationships are built on the foundation of both partners' willingness to fight for each other, especially during tough times. If that willingness is no longer there, it's important to assess whether you're both still aligned in what you want. This is the time to have an open and honest conversation to understand where you both stand. If she's ready to let go, it may be time to acknowledge that and focus on your own emotional well-being. Recap of the 8 signs. We've explored 8 subtle yet significant signs that may indicate she's emotionally preparing to say goodbye, even if those words remain unsaid. From emotional withdrawal to a lack of effort, and from the fading of physical closeness to her preoccupation with other things, these shifts are powerful indicators that the emotional connection is weakening. While these changes may seem minor at first, they can collectively reveal that she is moving on, even if she's not vocalizing it. Recognizing these signs requires emotional awareness and a certain level of courage. It's easy to ignore or rationalize small changes in behavior, especially when we're still invested in the relationship. But often, it's these very subtle shifts that hold the key to understanding the future of the connection. By acknowledging these signs, you are empowering yourself to see the reality of the situation, no matter how difficult it may be. If you've noticed any of these shifts in your relationship, now is the time to reflect on your feelings. It's essential to be honest with yourself about what's happening. Take a moment to evaluate where you stand emotionally and decide what is best for you moving forward. You deserve clarity, peace of mind, and a relationship that brings mutual growth. Don't ignore the truth. Facing it head-on is the first step toward healing. Acceptance is key. Relationships, like people, evolve over time, and not all relationships are meant to last forever. By understanding when it's time to let go, you free yourself to heal and move forward with confidence. This process may be difficult, but it will also teach you valuable lessons that will strengthen your future relationships and emotional resilience.